Racism in classical music is over because Marian Anderson sang at the Lincoln Memorial, right? Right? Hi. Welcome to the Listener's Guide. I'm Steve, and Black History Month is supposed to be a time when we celebrate important Black figures throughout history, but also that we have some important conversations about why these people don't get recognition for the rest of the year. And unfortunately, classical music can be one of the most racist institutions there is. For heaven's sakes, it's still not uncommon for major opera companies to perform Otello and Aida in blackface rather than just hiring Black performers to do the part for them.
So you mean you want more Lawrence Brownlee?
I mean, yes, because he's inhuman. But doesn't it bother you that he's the only Black tenor that you can think of who's broken out onto the major opera scene?
Yeah, but by the same token, shouldn't it bother you that he played Prince Charming in the Met's production of La Cenerentola? I mean, if a Black man is the only one who can play Otello, then it logically follows
Watch how you end that sentence, because I don't like where it's headed.
But how can a Black man play European royalty?
In a fantasy setting where race isn't inherent to the plot?
Yeah, but in Europe...
Joseph Bologna.
Excuse me?
In the late 1700s, there was a Black aristocrat in France by the name of Joseph Bologna, who led the first all-Black regiment in France during the French Revolution, fenced like a fiend, and oh yeah, was a very skilled composer who's noted as one of Mozart's influences, seeing as they spent about 2 months living in a hotel together. And if you listen to his music, you can hear the connection. He wrote operas, symphonies, concertos, sonatas, all of immense quality, and can you imagine how many of them are performed today?
Okay, so there was one Black composer who...
Speaking of important composers, there's a lot of interesting discussion going on about Beethoven's race, and while the most conclusive statement that I've been able to derive is that he was othered by his hair texture and complexion, there's a lot of room for the suspicion that he may have been at least mixed.
Okay, so there are possibly two composers.
Did I say I was done? How about Scott Joplin?
Yeah, everybody knows him.
Right, but what music of his do you know?
His rags, obviously, lots of rags.
Can't imagine what stereotype led to that.
Sing it, Sam.
You must remember.
But did you know that he also wrote an opera?
An opera?
Called Treemonisha. It's actually a pretty traditional opera with folk music, folk magic, and even a ballet. But it wasn't fully staged until the 1970s, 60 years after it was written.
Okay, but that sounds just like Showboat.
Yes, but it was written almost 20 years before Showboat. Of course, it's not difficult to see why it got less attention, because Showboat was written by this guy and treats Black music entirely differently.
How come you all know that song?
Why, do you know it, Queenie?
For sure I does, but I didn't ever hear anybody but colored folks sing that song. Sounds funny for Miss Julie to know it.
Oh, listen, sister, I love my Mr.
Okay, so you've made your point. Classical music isn't kind to Black people, but what do we do now?
Play music by Black composers. Buy recordings of Black musicians. If you are a venue, company, or producer, seek out, hire, and promote Black performers. Tell Black stories. The way we talk about or don't talk about Black classical musicians throughout history affects the way we view or don't view Black classical musicians of today. Tons of Black children are turned away from classical music because of a lack of representation, and those who have the wherewithal to power through are met with disappointment after disappointment in trying to get their name out. If you think this is an important problem to rectify, do your part by showing that you think it's important. Now comes my assignment for you. Go and find a recording of a Black performer or a Black composer. Then come here and leave its title in the comments, or better yet, link to it and tell us why you like it. For instance, I'm going to leave a link to Jesse Norman's phenomenal performance of When I Am Laid in Earth from Henry Purcell's Dido and Aeneas, because it is hands down my favorite recording of that aria, and Jesse Norman is one of my favorite sopranos. Speaking of which, she just released a memoir called Stand Up and Sing about her experience learning how to sing opera growing up in the Jim Crow South, which will be an enlightening read for anyone so inclined. So please leave your input down in the comments. Thank you all for watching. A special thank you to our Patreon subscribers who help keep this content coming. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time on The Listener's Guide.